Earl Browder, well-known past leader of the United States Communist Party, in his book Victory and After, stated, quote, "The American communists worked energetically and tirelessly to lay the foundations for the United Nations, which we were sure would come into existence." End quote. The April 1945 issue of the communist periodical Political Affairs explained to its readers the importance of getting the capitalist countries committed to this international body. It pointed out that since Russia would be one of the dominant voices in the UN, it could be used to prevent other countries from acting independently against communism. I'm just going to make a note to get that book. See, these are the kind of books that I like to go after and get hold of, because that admission that the United States communists have been working energetically and tirelessly to lay the foundations for the United Nations, that's a really critical kind of admission that would be good to have a hard copy of to, teach people about. It means that the policy predominant during the interwar years of attempting to solve the world crisis at the expense of the Soviet Union is replaced by the policy of attempting to solve the crisis through cooperation with the Soviet Union. Five months later, the communists printed a pamphlet entitled The United Nations, which further explained what function they had in mind for the United Nations. To be sure, it was not the function of peace that Americans anticipated. The pamphlet said, quote, which is the San Francisco Conference, it met to outlaw war. But everyone knows that war cannot be abolished until imperialism is abolished. End quote. It went on to explain that there were 4 primary reasons why communists should support the United Nations. 1. The veto will protect the USSR from the rest of the world. 2. The UN will frustrate an effective foreign policy of the major capitalist countries. 3. The UN will be an extremely helpful instrument in breaking up the colonial territories of non-communist countries. 4. The UN will eventually bring about the amalgamation of all nations into a single Soviet system. In 1953, Colonel Jan Buchar, a former Czechoslovakian army intelligence officer, testified before the House Committee on Un-American Activities that a General Bondarenko delivered a lecture at the Frunze Military Academy in Moscow and declared, quote, "From the rostrum of the United Nations, we shall convince the colonial and semi-colonial people to liberate themselves and to spread the communist theory all over the world. We recognize the UN as no authority over the Soviet Union, but the United Nations serves to deflect the capitalists and warmongers in the Western world." Interesting use of the word deflect. One final and extremely revealing glimpse of the blueprint was offered by Dr. Marek Stanislaw Korowicz, a member of the United Nations delegation from Communist Poland, who defected in 1953 and sought political asylum in this country. Testifying before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, Dr. Korowicz said, "We were all indoctrinated strongly with the Russian master plan to reach the working masses of the various countries in the Western world over the heads of their governments. The organization of the UN is considered as one of the most important platforms for Soviet propaganda in the world.